So the title of this talk, how does one lead a rational life in an irrational society? This was an article published by Ayn Rand, 1962, objectivist newsletter. I'm guessing she got questions and this was her answer to the readers. It was later republished in The Virtue of Selfishness, 1964. Here we go. I prepared an agenda. I usually don't prepare such nice agenda, but there's a button on the software when you do the presentation. You do one click and it did this automatically.
Oh,
right.
With the icons. With
This
the
is
smiley face and with the V.
This is Microsoft.
The AI did. Right.
AI?
One press of the button and
Amazing.
this happened.
Wow.
We're like, yeah, let's keep it.
Really? AI?
Let's keep it.
Amazing.
So the
In
agenda is
PowerPoint?
here. Huh?
In PowerPoint?
Yeah, it's a PowerPoint. All the nice slides that you will see, the graphics were made by this AI thing, and all the basic slides are mine.
Right.
Hello, hello.
Good.
Welcome, welcome.
Hi, welcome.
Also, if you spot any nonsense there, it means I went off the beaten path. I gave myself some liberty to add some of my own thoughts. So if there's any doubt, question, just ask me, was that in the paper or was that your own bullshit? So I'll let
We'll let you know.
Yeah, you let me know. It's to keep you sharp, it's to keep you sharp. So let's just remind myself, so we'll do what's Rand's ask, like what's the main message of this article, how to accomplish the ask, why it's important, why we're having this discussion, how societies fail, I need you to give your 2 cents on that, practical advice before we break up, practical advice for your life, and optimistic last slide because all the rest was depressing. All right, so for the people who've read the article, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. What was her main ask? There was a message in the article for the reader. What is she asking us to do? It was basically one sentence.
Judge and prepare to be judged.
How do you pronounce it?
Pronounce moral judgment. Not to be afraid of.
You guys are good. You can
Very
read the-
good,
you can read
very
the
good.
text.
Yeah, I like it very much.
I
All
don't see
right.
anything. אפילו השוטר.
I'll read it to you if you can't see it.
Yeah.
It says, yes, Batman, I'm giving you a fair trial. Ha ha ha. Batman says, a Joker judge and a Joker jury.
Well, this is very actual.
It's very actual, yeah. Today in the Hague. So this is basically what you said, no? One must never fail to pronounce moral judgment. That was the ask. The moral principles to adopt in this issue is judge and be prepared to be judged.
Did you come up with this yourself, or did you see it in the context of the Hague trial?
Say again?
This
comment?
Yeah, did you come up with it yourself?
Oh no, I just looked on my Facebook feed looking for some caricature that has to do with the events, and this came up. That's a perfect fit. So, she's making a statement here. She just made a judgment call when she wrote the sentence, so she's also prepared to be judged. So all of you are able to judge her, but once you pronounce your judgment of her judgment, prepare to be judged yourself. All right, so there's a whole symmetry going on.
It's amazing, it never ends.
And everybody has to be an active player. So how to achieve proper judgment? Because she's asking us to make judgment. How to make judgment? Itamar, would you like to read?
Yeah. But to pronounce moral judgment is an enormous responsibility. To be a judge, one must possess an unimpeachable character. One need not be omniscient or infallible, and it is not an issue of errors or of knowledge. One needs an unbreached integrity, that is, the absence of any indulgence in conscious willful evil.
Right. Another note, if there's any word in English that somebody's not so sure of, either check your phone or just ask.
I don't have a question on the word. I have a slight question about the second sentence. So I'd like maybe someone would like to explain. One must possess an unimpeachable character.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit misleading, I think.
Well, what's the problem? What's the question exactly?
I mean, on the third sentence, she says one need not be omniscient or infallible.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's okay that you have errors of knowledge.
Yeah, insufficient
but not okay to
information.
have a breach of morality.
Yes.
So that's what it means? Like, the second sentence means that you should not have a breach of morality?
Yeah, that's the way I understand it. It means you have to be self-consistent, true to your values, true to your judgment. Just don't cheat. Don't pretend that you have information. Don't make up an answer. Don't run away from the responsibility. Just be honest.
I think that unimpeachable character means basically what the last sentence is. Like, don't indulge consciously and willfully any evil. If you do that, then your character is impeachable. You might have like gaps of knowledge, but your character is impeachable. Once the knowledge gap will be fulfilled, then
All right.
that's how I see it anyway.
Okay, but can a good guy who considers himself not evil still be impeachable or unimpeachable? Then maybe the word evil is a little bit extreme.
I think it's accurate actually,
Yeah.
because if you
Depends on how you interpret.
was it want to
No.
say something?
All right.
So,
If evil,
Yeah.
and I think Rand treats evil like this in most of her philosophy, evil in its basic form is evasion from realities, not
Exactly.
wanting to know reality and to know the facts. So if
So
you
that
want to be a
answers
judge, you must be unimpeachable from this perspective.
Okay, so that answers the question, I think.
But
It means just
maybe my problem is that since so many people, maybe the very vast majority of people, have breaches of morality,
yeah.
how do you know that you yourself don't have a... How do you know that you're
Right.
honest?
We have a slide on that. Keep that question in mind. We have a slide.
There is a style of it, not to comment.
No, you
Yeah, I
can
think
comment.
that,
I'm just
I
saying.
think that not to have morality here is as opposed to errors of knowledge, right? So it means that in the context of the knowledge you have, that you should, not to have an impeachable character. It means doing the best that you can, that with the resources that are available to you in that moment. That when it comes down, that you are honest and you never ignore any truth that you know is relevant, not the things that you don't know or that you don't know are relevant, and that you consider all the things that are relevant, and that you don't willful evil, that you don't do something in a malicious way, in a way that with evil intention. If your intentions are good in fact, and then everyone can do that. The point of morality in Rand's philosophy is that it's up to choice. So by definition, everyone can have an impeachable character. It's within everybody's ability. That people don't care about it, that people don't put the thought into it, into being moral. That happens, but shouldn't. That's not relevant because you can, even if you try and if you're conscientious, then you can achieve.
Let's try and take this a step forward. What might obstruct a person from being straight, honest, integral, and being true to reality? What might be the obstruction?
And
Think
desire.
of scenarios.
And
What do you mean a desire?
Almost everywhere you see that people are ignoring some facts, even you see that they know the facts to be relevant to the case, but they ignore them and don't judge with them because they don't want to make this decision.
Would they give a reason, like why would someone
Okay.
consciously?
This is a comeback
So-
to Yovav. It says like, how can you know
Yes.
your?
So
maybe I can't be.
I
Like,
think-
what would stop?
I
you?
think you just know. You know if you are putting all the effort you can, you are being totally rational and trying to understand things, or you're trying to make. If you decide what is your conclusion, if you priorly decide what your conclusion will be and then you try to justify it, then that's not moral. And I can give my example. When I decided to go to the army, before I decided not to go to the army, I decided to go to the army and then it felt not correct I had a lot of problems with it, but I rationalized. I told myself, no, but it's good, no, but I want to do it because, and I started convincing myself, but I didn't treat the whole picture. I knew that I'm not מתייחס.
Relate to.
I'm not referencing or
Relating to?
Taking account of.
I'm not taking account the fact that I'm going to do it for 6 years and that I want to do it. And I want to do it for 6 years, and my main argument for doing it is because I'm scared what other people will say. And no, that's irrelevant, but it's so good and everybody says it's good, so yeah, I'll do it. So this is not moral, but if you are moral, you know, you feel, oh my God, I'm scared to make this decision, but you say to yourself, but I must take everything into consideration, must be prepared to deal with the full context of my decision and make the rational decision.
All right, and now
I want to add that
Okay.
you may, after you had a decision, you can think, afterwards and think, oh, I put too much weight into, I put too much weight into this concern and too little weight on this concern. When I made that decision, I was wrong. But that is not a breach of morality if you know, no, my aim the whole time was rationality, that I didn't ignore what I knew to be relevant, that I didn't let my emotions sway me one way or the other. Even if I was wrong, then it wasn't a moral fault. Right?
Maybe some examples can have. Imagine that you hear someone say 2 + 2 = 5, and he's just a nobody, and you say, oh, you're a fool, that's not true. And then imagine, this is an example from Pascal's book, he says, imagine that you meet the Sultan of Turkey, right? And he has 40,000 bodyguards around him, janissaries, and he tells you 2 + 2 = 5. Do you maintain your integrity, or you let irrelevant facts change your judgment because the Sultan said so? Or take another example. Suppose you're dating someone and she's very cute, and she says 2 + 2 = 5. So do you change your mind in order to get along with her? That's the kind of temptation that the character protects you from.
All right, that's another one, and then we move on.
So, the thing is that the fact that you don't mention anything, like if someone says 2 + 2 = 5, as long as you know that 2 + 2 = 4, you have there's no obligation for you to tell them that it isn't. You don't have to speak the truth, you have to know it. So as long you remain like with unimpeachable character if you don't say anything, or if you say that is your opinion or whatever it is.
Before we develop
sink
this,
into your mind.
the question is how to achieve proper judgment. What are the obstructions?
That society rewards irrationality. That's a main
rewards.
Rewards. And punishes rationality.
Okay.
Those are two different mechanisms, but both of them happen.
You're saying so it's the opposite of the way it should be.
Yep.
Okay, well, there's a slide on that too. So I mentioned here some of the obstructions that she either says explicitly or she hints at. So those are the list of the obstructions. You mentioned some of them. I have incomplete information to judge by, to go by. And I have personal feelings that might sway me. Personal feelings that you have to think with yourself, where did they come from? Why did I want to go to the army before the rationale kicked in? What moved me in that direction? So personal feelings, desired outcome. I know in my mathematics exam, I once wanted to prove a theorem is correct. You can either, on the test, you can either prove that it's correct or give one counterexample. I thought the theorem was correct, and I was able to prove it. It came back a week later with a big X mark on it. No, there was a counterexample. I proved a theorem that was wrong because I convinced myself that it was right, and I was able to find a proof. Once I knew that it was wrong, immediately I saw the mistake in my proof.
It happened to me a couple of times.
That's a very valuable lesson. that please find a seat. Personal favors, right? When you have a judgment call, and maybe you're not quite sure, and you're contemplating the pros and the cons, you might think, well, what might make my grandmother happy? And you make a judgment call that is not, not clean. And the payoffs, such things as, so this is me saying, not Ayn Rand, scientific progress. If you cheat on the exam, if your laboratory experiment didn't go right, but you kind of tweak the numbers so that the graph goes like smooth, the trend is like good, you proved you publish. But if it's not factual, if you cheated somewhere along the way, you hamper scientific progress. Boaz, you mentioned political reforms of Millet. He wants to make changes. In order to make political reform, you need to convince people to jump on board with your program. You're going to have to rationalize with them and convince them. So how do you achieve proper judgment, right? That's again another question.
No, but you're talking about moral judgment of other people, so how does that relate?
The way I read this article was in very broad terms. Proper judgment could be on an individual level, it can be society, it can be a lab experiment, it can be what should I wear.
I think you are equivocating judgment here. I think it's moral judgment. If you look at that quote, it's not judgment in the sense that every conclusion you have is a judgment. That's not the sense. It's another sense of the word judgment. So here, judgment means moral judgment. These of peoples or groups or movements or whatever character and moral. So in one sense of you realize that judgment has multiple senses of the word, right?
Sure.
So in one sense, E equals MC squared is a judgment, but in that sense, that's not true.
I think it's up to you to the audience. It crossed my mind as I was reading this article. You can read it that way, and you can also broaden the definition of judgment to include other
words
things.
have meaning in context.
Fine. But the way I read it works. So it's up to you during this lecture also to think about judgment in that context, a moral judgment, or basically any judgment, and the statements hold. But you told me if you find.
Agree to disagree.
But
if it holds, it holds. So if
in the previous slide, she said to pronounce moral judgment. But clearly, she said moral judgment.
Right. It's an article about moral judgment.
Yeah. Also, willful evil has to do with morality.
Yeah.
Right. But we did say, like Itamar I think mentioned it, that if you're not honest with what reality is, just again in broad terms.
Yeah, you can take.
And if you cheat yourself, if you lie to yourself to believe that she loves me or what I love her, if you lie to yourself, there's a bit of evil in there. Evil. So now again, it's morality. All right. So you see how I can tie it back in. And the statement still holds.
Yovav, I don't see where you're coming out of morality, because I think the core of Ayn Rand's message is morality is about choices. It's about how you make choices, and it's about what you can choose and what not. And the basic choice you have is either you think and put the effort to focus, or you drift, or you evade. You're putting an effort to not think. To evade the facts.
Yep.
So this is the core of morality. So it's not like she talks about morality and then she goes out of it because she talks about knowledge, and then she comes back into it because she talks about willful evil. It's all about morality. Knowledge is morality. Being knowledge-oriented and reality-oriented, it's the basic moral character of man.
Yes.
All right.
I think that's somewhat unique to Rand. And also, if I may talk about the payoffs of moral judgment, I think everything you have to gain from other people is a payoff of moral judgment. The connection, community, intimacy, and trade. Okay, so business, that's true. I think that the payoff of judgment is that you judge people, you judge who you want to connect with, who you want to be in a relationship with, any sort of relationship, a trade relationship, a business relationship, a romantic relationship, and then you judge who you're going to interact with, who is a good person, who is a not good person, and then you get the benefits of that. If you connect, even in a business, if you connect with someone who's good, you'll have a good deal. If you connect with someone who is evil, he may deceive you. You may lose a lot of money or a lot of products or whatever. And in a romantic relationship too, you know, if you're in a romantic relationship with someone who is not a good person, you'll suffer immensely.
I think the point is clear.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that. It's up to you to think of this lecture and this text. If it has to do with business, you just mentioned business, it has to do yes or no, moral judgment, person on person, court against defendant, societies against societies. Really, I think it's up to you. The lecture still holds. Let's move on. A lot of you mentioned, the question in the last slide was how to achieve proper judgment. And a lot of you mentioned it is in relation to objective reality. So that is our judge, and the quote there, every time you see a little bit of a gray background, that's a quote from the text. There is, however, a court of appeal from one's judgment. It is objective reality. Mm-hmm. So when I thought to myself, how can one betray objective reality, I came up with two main forms that one can betray, detach oneself from reality, and that is either to be agnostic. To me, consider a man or society. You want to consider a man, I can also consider a general society. Consider an agnostic, man or society, that stays neutral regardless of reality, and just think to yourselves, where would that lead? Or someone who is agnostic, right? They refer to knowledge, and they may pronounce their opinion, man or society, but they consistently err, right? So these are two. Is there a third way that someone can betray verity? Either you ignore it, or you don't ignore it, but you misinterpret it. Is there a third way?
I think the Ayn Rand's point is not that. I think the Ayn Rand point is that some people are just are dogmatic in the sense that they are just you know, they are willfully, they default on thinking in the same way that an agnostic person defaults on thinking. You can see that, right? An agnostic person just doesn't think about things, he remains neutral, he defaults on thinking. But someone who consistently denounces everyone defaults on thinking in the same way. He's not gnostic in the sense that he knows everything, like he doesn't know anything, he just consistently...
he doesn't. So one guy evades the question, doesn't want to get involved in the topic, and the other guy gets involved, but in the not in the proper manner, not in relation to reality.
I have another example.
Yeah. Example?
Some event is very unlikely to happen, but it happens.
Okay.
Therefore, it had to come from God. Because it came from God, it had to have happened.
Yes, that's a very specific example of irrationality, right?
Yeah, but it's a good example of how faulty thinking can work. All right, something for the physicists in the audience. I was gonna say judgment and entropy, but I decided to go with energy. Something that crossed my mind as I was reading the article. What requires more effort or more energy out of you personally when you judge or when you not judge? So I tried to make a list of what requires my energy when I need to make some judgment. I want to get involved. I want to pronounce my judgment. I want to take a side. So I gave a list here of, first, you have to collect the relevant information. That takes effort, takes time. You have to interpret the full situation. You have to exercise your brain, some calculations going on. You have to project into the future the possible outcome of this situation that you're going to decide upon. About the army, let's say, a career choice, or am I going to date this girl? You have to project into the future. You have to consider alternative steps. What if I declare war on Gaza? What if I don't? What if I say F you to the United States? What if I don't? You have to project that. Where is that going to take us? So you have to run these simulations in your brain. And pros and cons. When you weigh the pros and the cons, it has to be in relation to something like abstract principles and standards, right? So you have to have these principles and standards in your mind in order to be able to weigh. That's already pretty complicated. And then eventually you pronounce your judgment. Let's say Boaz wrote a proposal, right? I read your proposal. That took effort. He wrote it. It's a couple of pages.
Just to correct, I didn't write it.
Okay.
But I received it in order to consider it.
Yeah, somebody takes the effort to make a post, make a poster, I don't know, retweet something. It takes a bit of an effort. You have to work on it.
Right.
And then you get to deal with the pushback. All right, so some fear to confront there if you don't want to get the pushback.
But you know.
And then when you make your pronouncement, you're going to have to answer some questions. People will ask you, why did you make that choice? What about this? What about that? What about God? What about the other God? And you're going to have to get into some argument. And you'll, like Rand said, you yourself would be put on trial because you made judgments. And on the other side, when you don't judge, it's a shorter list. It takes some effort. I couldn't ignore it. It takes some effort. You have to maintain your avoidance because people might push you to make judgments. You're gonna have to find a way not to make judgments. Cultivate neutrality. Make up excuses. This is when I argue with people who don't exercise their brain. They think immediately and they give me some excuse out of nowhere that doesn't make any sense. But they have to think of an excuse. Yeah. You want to say something?
So, two things are missing. I mean, it's great, but where are the advantages of thinking? Like, if you're judging. By not judging, you are condemning yourself into something.
Nice.
And by judging, you are basically creating something out of yourself. And another thing that I think would benefit from separation is you don't have necessarily to pronounce your judgment, but I guess you'll get into that later. Because
that was the ask. She's asking you to at least, if you don't agree, say I don't agree, but like to pronounce some judgment.
If I remember correctly the paper, she says that you don't have to pronounce your judgment. Like you have to make it, but you don't have to. I'm not sure, I read it years ago, but...
we'll get to that quote.
Yes.
But I liked the first part of your statement of the...
Yeah, what are the advantages? And what are the benefits, what you're going to get from doing that.
So that's the next line. What puts more checks on the authorities, on your business associates, on your family and friends? If you're a very neutral citizen, you don't vote, you don't take a stand, you don't read the news, you lose control. And somebody else is going to make the judgment, the decisions, sway the audience, sway the voters their way, not your way. And your friends, they might betray you if you don't put some checks on them. You might feel like taken advantage of.
I think what you just said is so true, because I don't know if you noticed it, but you said what happens if you don't judge, you don't read the news, and then someone else will decide for you. But it's not like it happens just because now it happens, but it may not happen in some other society. No, it must happen. If you don't judge, in order to live, man has to judge. That is his basic means of survival. Judge everything around him, think about it, decide what to do. If he don't judge, he can't live. If he lives, it means someone else judged. Someone else made the decision for him. So you just, what you do when you don't judge is, instead of being reality-oriented, you are people-oriented. They make reality for you. If they say something, that's true. If they don't say something, if they say something is wrong, that's
no.
wrong.
Just I want to say that to that what you say, you just live like Peter Keating. You just someone else just make the choice for you and.
Okay. So just to complete that line, if you as a person or as society don't judge the authorities and your associates, it will be in the reverse. The authorities will be the ones judging you. They will be putting the checks on you.
What's the meaning of the phrase "put more check"?
To put more check, like in checkmate.
What?
Yeah, actually, I didn't check the origin of the word.
זה לחסן, to check,
The
to
checks
put
and
someone in
balances
check.
are
Yeah,
לחסן
put
אותו.
Put more
constraints.
check is to put more
לבקר,
constraints. More power.
לבקר,
Constraints,
לשמור,
Yeah, לרסן, לבקר, to constrain, to strain. So when I put you in check in a chess match, if I put you in check, you have to respond to the check. You can't ignore the check, because your king is going to go in the next move. That's a check. So there's a place you can't go, you have to go somewhere else.
Again, I think it's mainly about just enjoying what the good people have to offer to you and avoiding what bad people have to offer, which is nothing, which is harm.
Somebody wants to read the quote?
I'd like just to mention something on your previous slide. It's look like the not to judge a short list, and maybe it's an easy task, but the problem with not judging that it's never-ending work.
Yeah.
Which means if you falsify or a reality, you will keep bumping in a wall of reality, and it's mean that you'll have to maintain it, and the burden is accumulating. Yes. Which mean if you're doing the hard work and you put something in the right place, okay, it's done. It's like a concept. You can use it. You can hold it. You can move forward. You don't need to remember every lie you told around something.
Exactly.
But if you start to lie about something and to twist reality, you will have to remember all your lies in order to create alternative reality, and this is impossible work. Nice. So it may look short, but it's much more tiresome.
So yeah. I'll give the spoiler, because your statement now was optimistic, and to those who arrived late, you didn't see the agenda, but on the agenda it says that the last slide will be optimistic, and that's
okay,
basically
sorry
the to that it comes with that built-in instability, built-in paradoxes. Yeah. Anybody wants to read this famous? Everybody knows this, right? Everybody hears this.
Judgment as a moral responsibility. First, they came for a socialist, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me.
Everybody knows the context behind this. I don't need to.
Yes, but I want to say something. I remember this quote much more powerful, because now that I read it,
yeah,
he puts socialist in there and trade unionist, and it's like he doesn't put any judgment. It's like, yeah, if they come for someone, you must defend them, because that it's like it's some Benny Gantz youth.
Come for is they killed them in concept.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yes, but.
The point here was...
Yeah, I understand the point. I know this sentence, and I do agree with what you meant to say, but now that I read it, it's like...
I didn't understand the criticism, so can you explain again?
Yes. It seems like when he writes this, he's anti-Nazi, but that's it. And I think you see this today, especially in Israel, like you can be everything, but you can't be a Nazi. You can be a communist. You can love the Palestinian Authority. Mm-hmm. You can be a trade unionist and want to strike the whole economy for 200 years a day. And you can do whatever you want, but if you are a Nazi, so
So his message is exactly relevant to your complaint. He says, no, you have to keep those authorities in check. You have to cast judgments at the right time.
Basically says that you need to stand up against anybody who will try to force you by violence, doesn't matter what you are. And this is fine. I mean, it's not that he wrote Stalinist, communist. He wrote socialist, and it's true that he may look upon socialist as something which is more culture, let's say, civilized. But if you draw the line on violence action or not, then you can accept it.
I think that's exactly the point of the poem. Exactly the point of the poem. He repeats it. They came for the. He says it 4 times. They came for the. That's the problem. So you have to speak out against that.
You have to be careful.
Then they came for the Nazis, and I did not speak out. Because the socialists did exactly, in Soviet Russia, they did exactly what the Nazis did.
Oh,
but would you put here, first they came for the Nazis,
Okay.
And I did not speak out because I was not a Nazi. Then they came.
So let's
I think-
Raise your
if I can-
voice,
if I can-
the argument is weak.
I think
But
the
okay.
point is, and I think the point is, and maybe I will take you back to the previous slide,
Sure.
is that when you fail to express moral judgment in the face of evil, and that takes me to the next slide, then you're actually a moral complicit to evil. You're actually saying evil is fine, and then when you don't judge, that actually means a moral degradation internally, and then
That's the point.
that takes you to evil
Yeah.
places.
All right.
So it's not
So-
about when good things happen that you don't speak up. It's when bad things happen that you don't speak up.
It's
And I just want to about that like that was not what happened to the communist filmmakers in the United States, the blacklist. No one came for them. If you're making that association, it's not that this poet is saying it's not okay to persecute communists, but it's not okay to put them in concentration camps. It's perfectly okay to
To
not
go
have
after
them
evil.
make movies that are communist propaganda. So yeah, there is that.
And also
you don't
it
have
turns
to be
out that a lot of
pro-socialist.
them were like, basically McCarthy was not that wrong.
Yeah, that's what I.
That's an unpopular opinion, but he was
I
not
don't
that
think
wrong.
McCarthy
Many of them were
responsible for that.
spies.
Actually, I think that's a myth, but yeah, it's just it was right to put them on. It was right that they could have literally. You don't put them to death. They can have literally any other job. They can remain communist. Just they can have any other job than making propaganda films. They can work at the supermarket as communists. They can work anywhere as communists. Just not make, and that's fine. That's you can fire them from making propaganda films, but you can't put them to death. And
No one did.
the point of the poem is just that why would that person ignore when they put if the government right now had a law like prosecuting socialists, you should be outraged. You should be outraged, and that's the point of the.
Which brings us to this slide, which is judgment as a moral responsibility. Sorry for
Yeah,
interrupting.
sure.
Judgment as a moral responsibility. Would anyone volunteer to lead? You raising your hand? No. Anyone?
Okay.
Let's go.
Judgment is a moral responsibility. There is no escape from the fact that men have to make choices. So long as men have to make choices, there is no escape from moral values. So long as moral values are at stake, no moral neutrality is possible. To abstain from condemning a torturer is to become an accessory to the torture and murder of his victims.
All right.
This is his own moral character.
Yeah.
This is his own moral character and standards that he reveals when he blames or praises.
Right. So basically, I put the image of a compass there, because every time this topic comes up, I get this image in my mind of a compass. People have to navigate this world somehow. They're driven, we know from our previous lectures, by their morals and their values. Those are the things that drive them as long as they exercise their brains. So they have this compass. And in this lecture, we're saying it is your responsibility, like in the previous poem, to let us know what is your compass, because when you tell us your compass, we know your character, your standards. Those that you blame, we know that you're against them. Those that you praise, we know that you support them. And now we can judge if you're right, you're wrong, we agree, we don't agree. And everybody is fine-tuning, everybody's polishing their value systems. And that's how we can, create societies and have a joint mission, joint agenda. What was I going to say here? To abstain. Oh yeah, this. So Itamar, this has to do with your statement. So I'm just emphasizing to abstain from condemning a torturer is to become an accessory to the torture and murder of his victims. This is a popular meme that is, as you know, I surveyed my Facebook to bring the graphics. So I noticed everybody's posting this, so I also posted it. And it's found also in Hebrew in מדרש תנחומה, כל שנעשה רחמן על האכזרים, בנוסף נעשה אכזר על רחמנים. Itamar said, you kind of try to say that it's inevitable. If people start diverting away from their proper morals, they lie to themselves, they cheat themselves, they evade, they become neutral, whatever it is, it creates a vacuum that evil forces will, Itamar says, inevitably will flow in, and you yourself will find yourself being corrupted, thinking back, oh, I lost my values. We have a slide coming up on that. What is this one? The penalty of not pronouncing judgments. Yeah, anybody wants to read it?
You can see why abstaining for judgment comes to the benefit of the evil, right? Just if I don't judge tomatoes, I don't appreciate tomatoes. If they're pretty or not, or if they kind of spoil, I don't care. And so there are some stands in the market that offer good tomatoes, and some offer the spoiled tomatoes. Like, which one would benefit if I just if I stop differentiating between tomatoes? Of course, it is the spoiled tomato stand. Because beforehand I wouldn't buy anything from him, and then I would buy some from him, some.
I think I want to go with that a step further. If you are consistently choosing, don't discriminate between tomatoes, that person will take the proper tomatoes to a different market where they care, and you'll be offered only the bad tomatoes. So now he's putting a check on you. He's forcing you to eat the bad tomatoes.
Yes, I just want to say more in the macro level, because the life is very complex. I mean, you need to make many choices, many complex choices. I mean, how to, what we said before, which people to relate with, what's our values, and for this we need to have a really appropriate consideration. We can't just be natural about it. And if we just we say we don't really care, we don't give any really deep thought about it, and so we just there is a vacuum, and it is a vacuum that other people give to us, and it's also we can see it in the level of the society. We see it out if we don't choose what to do with the Gaza that Hamas now control, and we choose, okay, we not go to fight it with them, but we don't also not. It's eventually finished with 7 in October.
After you say your reply, I want you to read this because you asked about if you have to, not have to pronounce.
So you had a very nice point here, because evil, like if you remember, like you've mentioned Peter Keating, so I imagine you read Fountainhead. So they came to me a quote from Stephen Mallory that evil is not strong and big, it is weak and puny and many. I mean, I read in Hebrew, so I don't translate it accurately. But basically what happens is that evil is many small, like blobby ants of weak humans that, well, basically it's very opportunistic by its nature. It goes into vacuum. So if you leave a vacuum, as you said, then that's where evil comes in, because that's where it can come in. It cannot force itself into like place that is integral. It has to have a vacuum. Because again, of its nature, it's not strong and big, it's weak and many. So it seeps like water.
I like it that you guys are discussing the mechanisms of how the dynamics here work, because there's a slide about the mechanisms, and I thought you might be bored with it, but I think you'd like that slide.
I want to add something, because let's talk about, I think you're absolutely right, but let's understand what's exactly in the nature of evil makes him like that. The thing that is evil is evading reality. So if you evade reality and no one is there to compensate your errors, you just build the building not with the laws of physics, and it will crash on your head. You will try to trade something that is worthless, and everybody else will say, no, it's worthless, I'm not trading with you. So the only way you can evade reality, because you can't really evade reality, is evade it through someone who doesn't evade it.
Interesting point.
You can't, the brutes, Stalin, Hitler, they can't make science, they can't make science. They just are, it's like they are not reality oriented. They don't care about the fact.
They made some sense.
Yes, but it's not them. They made it through some good people who did care about reality. Some mixed people. Yeah, the Nazis, the scientists of the Nazis weren't good people, but they had some integrity about the scientific method. But I think, and Rand argued it, it's not a coincidence that the United States had built the atomic bomb before Nazi Germany, although all of the quantum mechanics and came from Germany. It's not a coincidence. It's because this country was reality oriented and science oriented, and this country wasn't. And just evil is impotent if you don't. It's just impotent.
Yep.
The only way it can thrive is through someone who is not impotent.
To summarize.
Yes.
Another point that is not the same but kind of on the same drift is that Hamas gets its say like moral support from the UN, etc. Right?
Let's leave that for the discussion. I want to go back on the rails here. Basically, Itamar said, and I'll try to summarize. Reality is one. There's only one. And if you divert from it, you detach from it, you divorce from it, you're bound to hurt yourself, hurt others, make mistakes, and it will be counterproductive at the end of the road. Whichever road you take, it's not the one road of reality. There's like 1,000 infinite possibilities of making mistakes. And that's why we as a society need to correct the people who make mistakes. You know how when a dog misbehaves, you correct them to socialize them. You correct. So to correct someone is to pronounce judgment. What is your name again? I forgot. Ido. You're going to read this one.
Cool. The penalty of not pronouncing judgment. Observe how many people evade, rationalize, and drive their minds into a state of blind stupor in dread of discovering that those that they deal with, their loved ones, or friends, or business associates, or political rulers, are not merely mistaken, but evil. Observe that this dread leads them to sanction, to help and spread the very evil whose existence they fear to acknowledge.
Alright, so this was basically said. Even the good people who don't stand up against Stalin and correct them, let's say the scientist, doesn't correct Stalin, ends up being the scientist for Stalin, spreading the evil that the scientist is afraid to call out.
Yeah, but she touched here about the point of loved ones, and I want to give a concrete example that I see. It's exactly a lot of flaws in Israel are because the good Israelis, especially when they founded the country, gave a pass to the bad ones, the ultra-religious, the Orthodox. They gave them a pass because they're loved ones. They may be mistaken. They didn't say no, those people are evil. They are anti this world, anti this life, anti-mind, anti-man. They said no, we can give them a pass. It's our grandparents. We came from this place. So they gave him. Okay, so you can not go to the army. You can get money from the state. Yes, we will write in the Declaration of Independence a lot of things for the Orthodox Jews, and it creates a lot of problems.
Who else gets a pass?
Everybody.
I think I can give
examples from different fields.
I can give another historical remark. I think history repeats itself here. Is the appeasement policy of Britain to Germany before World War II, and Chamberlain, and before him Eden, and I think that I read about it in the book by John David Lewis. He's an objectivist historian, and the book is in translation, right?
Yeah.
Which book? The Nothing Less Than Victory. And the point there is that that's the book. The point there
this
is
was not
that
orchestrated.
This is the origin of the Tokyo gifts from heaven.
Yeah, there is a chapter on that. I talked about the chapter before that, which is the prelude to World War II. And what happened there is that the British blamed themselves on the rise of Hitler. It says, oh no, they are like that. They have a totalitarian country because they were not granted their rights as a country, like following the Versailles Treaty. And so the idea was that if you grant them their wishes, then they would be pacified, then they would not be aggressive. So they granted them first the Sudetenland, and then Austria, and then no, it's Austria.
Yeah, Austria,
Rhineland. Yeah,
no, it was Sudetenland in the 1937.
and these negotiations were one-sided. England had nothing to gain from them. They only gave stuff to. They only gave permission to Germany to do stuff, and the idea was that they're not really evil, right? They just need to get their stuff, the demands, and then they leave us alone. And this is a rationalization. Hitler was very open about his views, and even though they're often contradictory, and there was plenty of evidence that this guy is he wants war and he wants to conquer. He is totalitarian. But they evaded that until like early 39.
So when we get to the slide with the mechanism, you'll all recognize that there's a slide with mechanisms.
Right.
I want you to help me work. It's not complete, of course. So keep that example in mind, and let's see if the mechanism, if it fits with the mechanism. Aviram, you had something to say?
Yes, I think that you are missing something. I reread this paper. I remind you that we've read it on May 2022, so a year and a half ago. And I also noticed what you have been emphasizing. Yeah. The way I put it to myself is that if people would have behaved as Ran recommends, irrational societies would not remain irrational, because the judgment of rational people will alter the nature of that society. But the thing is that you have to recall the context, and the context is the question, how do you lead a rational life in an irrational society? So the context is, even if you're going to pronounce judgments, you're not going to have much effect on the overall atmosphere of that society. So why do it anyway? And I think that your emphasis on giving society negative feedback when it is misbehaving or misthinking does not answer that concern. So I'm going to be critical and judgmental as much as I can possibly but I'm still not going to change anything. So why be judgmental? And I think that the passages where this is said in the most important clear way is where she says, moral values are the motive power of man's actions. By pronouncing moral judgment, one protects the clarity of one's own perception and the rationality of the course of the course one chooses to pursue. And when she describes, I think that's what you were quoting. When she describes what happens to you on the personal level, not on the societal level, when you don't do that, she says, drive their mind into a state of blind stupor. So in order for you not to notice the evil that's going on around you, you have to cripple yourself. You have to, in a sense, sterilize your mind. It's very, and that destroys your capacities of enjoyment from art, from relationships, from your career, from everything. You're turning yourself into stone in order not to see what's going on around you. So by pronouncing moral judgment, you preserve your character. And that's the main reason why you should do that. You may not change society, although it would be helpful.
Thank you. I'll give you the floor just in 1 minute. I just wanted you to notice that what Nadav said and what Aviram said, it's very similar. Aviram focused on the individual level, but the same thing expanded to a social society or a nation level that goes astray. It sounds kind of what Nadav said, right? So it can be on a personal level, it can be on a national level. Some of the same mechanisms, and we'll wait for the slide on the mechanism. I'd like both of you to think of the national level and the personal level and to see.
There's no
if-
national level per se. It's
Yeah.
just
We'll get to it.
being
I don't want to.
reality oriented about things going on in politics. And I think that Nadav has been commenting on the basic need to judge, which is just to become aware of facts that pertain to possible harm or benefit. If you judge, you know what's good for you, know what's bad, and you act accordingly. And that's the main benefit here. But again, remember the context. The context is the question how to lead a rational life in an irrational society. So it's a sub-problem, and it requires some other more specific advices. I think.
Okay, we're gonna get to that in the next slides. You have something to say about that?
I would argue that by enacting judgment, you will create yourself a rational society. You cannot make society by itself rational, but you can definitely
Not
make your own
necessarily.
closer circle.
You will have
Also-
you will have a positive impact, but
Yeah.
it
No,
might
no,
not be
Yeah, that's
Again,
basically the
the
point.
society consists of the people that you interact with, and the people you interact with most are the people closest to you, your business associates, your friends, and so on and so forth. If you will enact judgment, and if you will be rational, then those people will reflect that over time.
that
Either they
process
will change.
would require several generations
No.
to change things.
I have done so in my life.
You saw the.
I think
on
you're
the-
not talking just, you're talking about your close circle,
Yes.
and Aviram talks about nation as a whole.
No,
Exactly.
it's connected. It's
Yeah, of course it's connected, but
I imagine the person
this
who asked
is
this
much
question-
more immediate than this one.
This was asked by
But
guys
look at the
who
connection.
sent a letter to Ayn Rand, and I imagine some guy like me who is desperate because he constantly hears horrible things being said and done around him, and he's just with his hands on his face and he's asking how do I go on living. And so that's for me the context of this essay, and it's very surprising that she took this kind of route, right? Because superficially you would say, oh, hang in there, focus on your values, read, have good friends, and she goes to the heart of the matter with this issue of judgment. So it's important to remember what is she's trying to, the kind of feeling of being under siege by a bad culture. Imagine people in Saudi Arabia for whom it's probably much worse.
Right.
another
On
point
the
is-
agenda, I have 1 or 2 slides about practical advice to end this talk. I'm going to send you out with practical advice and then the optimistic slide at the end. I want to move forward. This is
Yeah, sure. Thought is of the individual. There is no thought of a collective.
true. We know that.
So when a society is being irrational,
Yeah.
it just means that there is like
A majority.
motion, like something put in motion.
Like a trend, like a social trend. Yeah. And I think what Ido is trying to say, okay, you're a player in that society as long as you live there, as long as you have relations with those people. You have your 2 cents to add to the pile, so might as
Not
well.
only that, you can change your own pile.
You
I've
change
met a lot of people at work, and the only real friend is Yovav. I mean, and again, these are the people that we spend time with.
Okay.
And same goes for every person close to me.
Okay.
And basically what has happened over iterations and time is that all of the people that are close to me and associate me in any way have to act rationally. If they don't, they're out.
Just fade away.
It's like people who say, oh, don't go voting in the election because voting doesn't impact there's a very small chance that your vote will impact. No, only votes impact the results in a system where it's based on votes.
Yes.
It's super absurd. And every time people say that, they're like, what did you say?
All right,
Like,
I'm gonna move.
yeah, like the whole society is individuals. Like, oh, an individual can't. No, only individuals impact. It's like there is nothing else but individuals.
All right, I'd like to move us forward.
Pronouncing your opinions and judgment may impact more for other people's
Right,
votes,
right. It's
So,
only that. It's only individuals. There's
I mean, voting
nothing
itself
else.
may impact less than talking and
Yeah,
convincing.
take the part.
It's like it's 100% of the result is by voting. There is no other.
No, you can do more. You can be part of the campaign. You can,
Right, right.
I got my mother to vote. I got my brother to
But it
vote.
all ends up in voting.
It
No, it's
changes
only
people's
voting.
I think that from technical perspective, your vote is just a very small impact on all of this political process, but I think it's very different.
It's a different mechanism.
But what if you create a nice cohort around you? and those people then convince other people to join the same cohort.
Yes, this is right.
Basically.
I like it how he always keeps thinking about mechanisms. The next slide goes to mechanism. Just to bring us to the next slide of mechanisms, I just wanted to give you these examples that she gives. Yeah, all these examples that she gives. And you can see that it starts from the very small, just the person that you know that might lie and you give them a slide. You know that they lie, but he means well. A bum on the street just can't help it. All right, so you give him a slide. You don't correct him. You don't cast judgment. You give them a slide, but it escalates. There's a juvenile delinquent. Okay, that guy's.
The juvenile delinquent is like Hitler is the example, right? It's like they are bad, the Germans, because they need more land, they need more accommodations.
You're jumping to the end. Yeah, in the end, it's the ruler, right? Someone who's really power-seeking, and they can be dangerous for you. Juvenile delinquent. Yeah, he's violent. He's gonna make some property damage. Fine.
Yeah, it's an analogy is only in one aspect.
Yeah, the criminal is the next level up, and after that, the power seeker.
Yeah,
So
everything
it frees a
compounds,
society.
and if you ignore the small things, they compound into big things.
Yeah. So now we get into the mechanisms.
A child who bullies other children, it's because of bad education.
That's a different topic. Okay, Aviram, do you want to read this one? Because I think it's the same one that you read.
Moral values are the motive power of man's actions. By pronouncing moral judgment, one protects the clarity of one's own perception and the rationality of the course one chooses to pursue.
All right, so basically we discussed it. Aviram already made that comment, and we discussed this when the last slide was showing. I just made a graphic just to make it look like it's a mechanism. There's another slide for mechanisms. But you can see that your values drive your actions, but between those two, you have to go through some judgment, right? If you want to take action,
I think isn't the judgment before the values? Like you need.
No, you need
you're right.
to
It kind of envelops both of them.
It reminds me.
I didn't have that
when
graphic.
You were in the meetup on epistemology when we said like
No.
it's unit. No, it's a entity identity. They are a circle, and then they produce a unit. So it's like values and judgment. They feed each other. Like you judge, and then you make better values, and then you judge these values, and then it goes out to action.
I think that the judgments are a type of actions.
Say again,
In
what?
this context.
What'd you say?
I think that judgments are a type of actions in this context.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's in a sense it's
Just that the judgment is in your brain and your action, like it's all visible. You pronounced it, you moved something, you did something. You're right, I agree that this sketch is not exact. The judgment kind of envelops the both. But still, your values drive your actions, and it has to go through some filter, and that's your judgment. And now the mechanism. I think this is the most complicated slide, so let's be a little bit patient and let's see if we can work this out. So keep in mind, this mechanism has to do either with, you can think about big nations, or you can think of the individual level. And I'm trying to make the case that failed morals lead to failed societies. So I'm starting with moral neutrality. For whatever reason, somebody decides to be neutral, a person or a society, they keep silent. Either because they are afraid, like that scientist or the Nazi cooperative, or I don't know, the wife of the Hamasnik that keeps the Jew in the basement, out of fear or apathy, or maybe laziness, whatever excuse you can make for them. There's moral neutrality. That leads to sympathy for vice.
I'm sorry, why is that moral neutrality?
Because they don't pronounce their judgment. They don't pronounce their judgment. They're just not involved.
Yeah, I don't think wives of I don't think wives of terrorists are neutral.
Think of the other 1,000 examples that I didn't mention. Just make up an example of your mind. Somebody's neutral.
So
Okay, so people who say like, I'm agnostic about
This
that
is
question.
not
I'm
about
agnostic.
terrorists.
It can be also in a free society.
People who don't take side on a particular issue, they're just out of it. They're out of it. They don't want to be involved.
We get that.
Okay, so those people. So consider that phenomenon. And the claim is, she claims, Irrational claims, they have to develop some sympathy for vice, sympathy for evil, okay, for misconduct or lack of moral. They have to. Why?
Switzerland in the Second World War.
Any example you have in mind, just go with the mechanism and tell me if your example goes through or fails. Think of an individual, think of Switzerland, think of the Hamas, whatever.
Oh yeah, let's bring examples. Why not?
Yovav, can I ask you a question about the mechanism?
I want like 10 examples in your mind and then...
Why?
No, it doesn't work.
When you constructed it must be in this order, because
No.
it's like, I think, sympathy for vice.
Let's go with it and then
like
we'll
it.
evaluate if this helps anybody make a clear judgment or if it blurs your understanding. Let's distract.
This is the cascade for failing persons, not societies. So
Let's see that.
Failing persons are in the center of failing societies.
I want to go just read through it so to make sure everybody's read it and then we'll hear your judgment of this slide. All right, let's just go with the flow. Just go with the flow. Be neutral for a minute. Okay, so there's neutrality. Why does it develop sympathy for vice? I'm not going to explain everything because it's too much. I'm just going to give some hints and try to catch whatever you catch and use your own judgment. Why is there a sympathy for vice? When you refuse to call out the bad, right? You're neutral, you refuse to call out the bad, you're going to have to make some excuses for yourself and kind of hide, turn a blind eye, and you kind of start developing the sentiment that, well, there's good in everyone. That child delinquent, he just needs to be loved. Or that politician, he means to do well for the public. He's not all bad. Right? He's not all bad, so let's not judge him. So you have to start developing this kind of a rationale, if you want to call it rationale, to allow yourself to be morally neutral. You're starting to develop a sympathy for the vice, and that leads you to be to antagonism for virtue. You spoke about the British blaming themselves or left-wing Israelis blaming themselves. Those are examples in my mind, but you stick with your own examples. What is meant here? The refusal to acknowledge what's good. Same line as before, there's some bad in the best of us. She says something very interesting. She says, if you're neutral, and you're not going to call out the bad, you are threatened by the good. Because if something is obviously good, and you will pronounce that is good, I give praise to that, automatically you are distinguishing between the good and the bad. So you have to speak out against the bad. But you want it to be neutral, so now you're antagonistic for the good by necessity. Make sense?
Just that the good doesn't fit your paradigm. It just there is something, right?
My paradigm?
No. If you're neutral, right? That just if you think that there aren't good things and then there are good things, you get.
The thing is that neutral here is forced. It has to be somehow maintained, like Boaz said. There's strains on it. If you're trying to be neutral, because you're trying to be, I don't know, pure and like a tzaddik, like a saint, like a sage, you're not going to say that the bad is bad, and then the good poses a threat, because if you identify the good as good, it means you also have to identify the bad as bad, because you're setting the two things apart, and that destroys your neutrality. So now you're gonna dislike the good, because it threatens your neutrality. So you're gonna have to say when something good happens, well, it's not that good. Actually, this guy is malicious. Actually, I don't trust him. And that is antagonism for the virtue. You don't.
You have uncovered an amazing point here. And
I ran it.
You just,
For the record.
by pronouncing the good, you are denouncing evil. Therefore, if you don't feel comfortable with pronouncing evil, just denouncing evil, just pronounce the good. You will achieve the same effect with far little consequences.
Fine.
So if you find yourself incapable of doing that because you live in basically an irrational society which punishes reason, just pronounce the good. You will achieve the same thing.
The problem is, if you pronounce the good, in hopes to achieve this whatever, the same thing, a rational society or a thinker would say, oh, if you pronounce the good, why do you not go out against the bad? Now I'm forcing you to say something against the bad, and you're going to be in conflict with the bad, because you just said something bad about the bad. So that puts fear on people. They don't want to take sides. They want to stay neutral, so they don't pronounce the bad. They say the bad is not all that bad. It forces them to say that the good is not all that good. And so they start to make excuses why the bad is actually good. But the Hamasniks, they're fighting for freedom, they just want freedom. We're all people. And the Israelis, they're doing genocide.
They just want to watch Netflix.
You see how I think there's a mechanism. Let's go on to the next level in that cascade. Role reversal. I think you mentioned role reversal. The good is bad and the bad is good. Denouncing those who are good, and even being angry with them. Who are they to judge? Their mere existence, the success of businessmen, creates this kind of anger. Because of the preceding levels of the cascade, you start to be antagonistic and hating the good, condemning the good, denouncing the good, and making excuses for the bad, or even elevating the bad. Oh, they're such victims. The victims are pure. It kind of forces you into that kind of a strange logic that I never realized it until during this slide. How do people get to this role reversal? And I think this helps me understand a little bit of how that happens. And in the end, the last level of the cascade, you have totally corrupt morals. Right? This is what Aviram wanted to put the emphasis on. If you go down this pathetic line, what's the word that they use for kehut? You're numb to it. Like
numbness.
Numbness. You can no longer distinguish good and bad. You don't. In your personal life, you lose your ambition. You don't enjoy art because not everything loses value.
And I think it's not the only way, right, to be on the side on evil, right?
You have the floor. Just let me finish, okay. and then you go next. Because then we're ready to evaluate this mechanism, this slide. A moral blank check. If there's no good and no bad, you don't judge anyone. You give them a blank check. Here it's not a check like before. It's a blank check. Like do whatever you want. I don't judge you, and I expect you not to judge me, so I give myself a blank check, and now I can do whatever I want. Right? I can do bad things even, because we're in a society that nobody judges. That's kind of the agreement. Nobody judges. There's no judgment.
Notice how
you can't judge. Who are they to judge?
They view morality that morality comes from other people. Like if they don't judge,
let me just finish. This is a quote from her article. She says, values have no chance. If you go down this cascade and you get used to it and now you're stuck down there at the bottom, and you think it's really hard to think back at the values you maybe once had in your earlier life, and you think that you can actually act upon them and sustain them and hold them. You're so corrupt by this point that you don't believe that values have a chance in this world, and that leads to decadence of yourself as a person or of your society. Somebody mentioned, the fall of empires. Decadence. Okay, but what is that?
זיכרונות אדריאנוס.
All right. Okay. So now we're ready to evaluate. Who did I stop before they were gonna evaluate? Nadav and Itamar. You wanted to.
Yeah, fine. Go on.
Okay.
I just want to say that the interesting thing for me when I read this article, and I read only the first few pages because it's short, so only the first two pages because I was busy, but I read it some time ago. And what I noticed is, what does it mean to get a moral blank check? Because you just touched this point. Like they give you moral blank check and they want you to give them back. So what actually they're doing is giving themselves moral blank check. And what kind of corruption do you have in you that it's like you're so anti your mind and anti your life that even when you do pronounce some judgment, and the judgment is everybody can do whatever they want, you want the judgment of other people to justify your judgment. Like they want other people to say to them, yeah, you've got a moral blank check too. They view morality like it comes from what they tell me. If they tell me it's good, so it's good, it's fine. I want a moral blank check, and it's like a complete contradiction, because then you can't give the moral blank check. You can give a moral blank check only if you are in a place to give a moral blank check. But they want to give a moral blank check in order to get a moral blank check themselves. Like, you can't give what you don't have. So, do you understand me? I think
I don't think I do.
Okay. What I'm trying to say is that, first of all, they are oriented to other people. So they view morality out of like, if other people tell them something is good, then it's good, and if other people tell them it's bad, it's bad. So they seek the approval of other people. So they want moral blank.
They just want that nobody judge anyone. Yeah. Then you can do anything. That's what the blank check means.
No,
just,
they want no one to judge them.
Right.
So the method.
So they don't judge either.
Yeah. So the method is I don't judge you.
That's a mutual agreement, right?
I don't judge you, but then what they're actually doing is judging. When someone judges someone, they say, "Hey, don't judge him." That's a judgment.
Yeah.
Don't judge him.
In that way.
I'm using my brain to judge you. I'm saying, no, you can't judge him. Okay. So he recognizes that he can judge other people. He can say, no, that's bad. He judges him. But then this recognition is in order for other people to tell them, yeah, you can judge. But everything started from you judging the situation, saying, oh, I need other people not to judge me, because then I can. That
was hard. I
get the point. When someone says to you, "Oh, don't judge," it's like, "Are you judging me?" It's like
that's like really a singular. Like in a society that everybody's against judging, the minute you judge, someone tells you, "Oh, you're judging." Don't.
No, but that's a judgment, right? It's
a singular. It's kind of a singular example. It doesn't open the door to other judgment. You just shut the door.
Yeah.
Everybody who judges, you correct them. Say, hey, don't judge. Don't judge. Don't judge.
I think that they're willing to forgive anyone. They're willing to forgive anyone for anything other than a person who won't be willing to forgive something. It's just
the point of this slide and the mechanism is that it all started with neutrality, and that's why the first slide, her main ask was, don't be neutral. Have judgment, and if you can afford it, pronounce your judgment, make it known, so that everybody will stay on the same page, stay polished, we won't lose our morals, because at the end of the cascade, you're in a society where there's no morals, there's no values, there's nothing to fight for, and you're just gonna collapse. Aviram, you wanted to contribute something? Aviram?
Yeah, I think that the mistake behind the idea of neutrality, the idea that you can be neutral, is maybe it may be the idea that Rand has this idea where she says that every is implies an ought. So every fact that you identify to be true has some implications for living beings. And I think that this is the reason why you can't really be neutral. If something is a certain way, then it will stand in a certain positive or negative relation to living organisms. And so the idea of the people of neutrality is that some things don't pertain negatively or positively to human beings. Some things can simply be taken as they are.
Oh, but it's more radical. They think nothing is good or bad. It's just neutrality, right?
That's further down the cascade, but I think that initially the idea is that okay, I can be neutral. I'm not saying go ahead and kill him, and I'm not saying don't go ahead and don't kill him. I'm not saying anything.
But I think that what I had trouble with in the first place is that you're not morally neutral in the beginning. You have an opinion and you have a judgment, but you're not expressing it.
Why?
Because what he says.
But the question is to go under this piece.
Right.
Let's hear the question.
I know, but what I'm saying is that if a person is morally neutral, then he is already corrupt because there's no there are no values.
But
right?
why? But why? Why is he already corrupt? That's Because if you read the
No, because what he's saying, she's saying never fail to express judgment. That means you have values, you distinguish good and evil, and you refuse to express it. When you see something bad and then out of fear, apathy or laziness, you refuse to call it bad.
I took it as an assumption. Sorry, I took it as an assumption here, just because I cannot imagine what it would be like to be a human with no judgment and no more. I can't even imagine what that would be like. I'm imagining that the person who's neutral is kind of forcing himself to be. He decides to be neutral for whatever rational or laziness or whatever it is. But you're right. He has judgment. He doesn't act on it.
The process of corruption is between saying there are values, but I refuse to call them out because of whatever reason, and then you end up without, in such a conflict.
Yeah, that's the initiation of corruption. Leads to a reversal of good and bad down the cascade. It leads to decadence.
It starts external and it becomes internal. That's a tragedy because it becomes something that you don't express, and it becomes something that forces you to actually be corrupt.
I can connect this back to the first one and say, oh, there's a feedback side.
No, it's not a feedback.
She quotes
it has a direction.
There is a feedback. Because if you want to start with a person who's really has no judgment.
No, he has judgment. He refuses to express it.
Okay.
That's the problem. I mean, there is good and evil, but you refuse to pronounce it.
Right.
No, he may not have any judgment at all. He may be really just mindless about
maybe
just... Okay.
Let me read you an interesting part. So long as moral values are at stake, no moral neutrality is possible, and then she immediately, without any connection, says, to abstain from condemning a torturer is to become an accessory to the torture and murder of his victims. And the question is whether you can complete.
But the underlying statement is torture is bad. So you're making a judgment that torture is bad, and then you're refusing to acknowledge it.
That's what I'm doing. No, but that's what I tried to say. That the beginning of the chain, you make the judgment, and then you
stop making the judgment, and then you reverse it.
You make the judgment in order that other people will confirm your judgment by not judging your judgment, by saying, no, I don't judge you. So the judgment I've just said, the judgment that started all of it, is true.
Itamar, this is what you're describing is the psychology of a guilty conscience, but not everyone makes that mistake. Not everyone has a guilty conscience. Some people simply believe in a third option, a third position to have. You can be in favor, you can be against, and you can be none.
This is a great topic to continue later. I want to wrap up the slides. We'll talk about continue that later. I want to wrap up. I just noticed the time. I have 4 minutes, and I promised you practical advice, and then we end with the optimistic slide, and everybody goes down to get the hummus. Practical advice: the risk of over-pronouncing judgment. What happens if you just become, obsessed with it? You're at the risk of becoming automatic in judgment, meaning you don't really wait to collect all the evidence. You just immediately snap and say, "Oh, this is bad." If you become automatic, so you're basically refraining from.
She wrote this in the paper because that's very good. That's a very good point.
She said if you're automatic about it, you're not really exercising your brain. You're not really.
She mentioned it. I'll show you where.
Allow me to speed up. Allow me. You recourse to memorized slogans. You can probably identify a lot of people who are just spitting out slogans. You can see that they're not really thinking, and that you don't really value their judgment if they behave this way. You might become resentful and antagonistic. Just hate everybody. I don't know what. And you might become an obsessive missionary. And so she gives a little recipe. She says, one must know clearly, in full verbally identified form, one's own moral evaluation of every person, issue, and event with which one deals, and act accordingly. So if you're going to pronounce judgment, make sure you know what the hell you're talking about. And if somebody else makes judgment out of automatic mechanism, make sure, ask him, do you know in full, in verbal form, blah, blah, blah. You can judge them. And B, that one must make one's moral evaluation known to others, when it is rationally appropriate to do so, right? Don't destroy your relationships and your family relations and your dating life just because somebody's, have the wrong political view. Well, I don't know, it's up to you. I'm going to speed up. The minimal recipe, right? The minimal thing you need to do, that's actually an answer to you, Ido. Don't keep silent, that was the first slide. She says, pronounce your judgment, and she ends with it again. She says, when one deals with irrational persons, where argument is futile, a mere, I don't agree with you, is sufficient to negate any implication of moral sanction. Don't give off the false impression that you're aligned with someone if you're not aligned with them. Just say, I don't sign my name to whatever was just said. That'll be enough. When one deals with better people like in the room, a full statement of one's views may be morally required. That's when you have the patience. Optimistic last slide. I call this one the virtue of making judgment. Ask yourself, this
Is
was
totalitarian
the spoiler.
dictatorships optimistic?
Yeah, I'll show you. Oh, while I read this, look for the optimistic. There was a spoiler. Boaz already gave away the takeaway, but look for the optimistic part. It'll be highlighted in a minute. Ask yourselves, why totalitarian dictatorships find it necessary to pour money and effort into propaganda for their own helpless, chained, gagged slaves who have no means of protest or defense? The answer is that even the humblest peasant or the lowest savage would rise in blind rebellion were he to realize that he is being immolated, not to some incomprehensible noble purpose, but to plain, naked human evil. And that's the optimistic bit.
I don't know about the blind part, but
that's the optimistic. Like, it takes a lot of effort to sustain a regime. Let's say I give the Hamas as an example, the Palestinians. They hate. I visited what's it called, Egypt, for a month. They hate us. I think it takes a lot of effort to sustain a broad, national level, proliferation of hate. It takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, they have lots of propaganda.
It takes a lot of propaganda. A lot of the money goes.
Excel at that.
If you look at the totalitarian regimes, you look at the budget. How much of the budget goes to espionage on their own people, propaganda for their own people? A lot of money goes into it.
The Catholic Church is exactly that.
To gag people. And we had that slide where I showed the effort that it takes on your part to judge, and we said if you don't put in that effort, they will put that effort to judge you. And we're going to end with this. That's it.
Can I
Sure.
say just read one sentence from here that is
From this
is a dark paragraph. So it's not
I wanted to end with the optimistic notes.
It's very
It's up to you guys if
strong.
you want to stay or not.
But I thought it was important.
Right.
And then on some grey middle-aged morning, such a man realizes suddenly that he has betrayed all the values he had loved in his distant spring, and wonders how it happened, and slams his mind shut to the answer by telling himself hastily that the fear he had felt in his worst, most shameful moments was right, and the values have no chance in this world. So it's about someone who does realize that he has values and he has some internal judgment, but he fails to pronounce them, and he still keeps it in his mind, and he's not really corrupted.
In his youth he had, right? And then he lost that.
But the fashion
he remembers
the
youth.
fashion is mostly the most corruption. It's not the cascades. It's
I'm putting the red
it's not
dot.
deteriorating.
I'm putting the red dot on the line you said. She said values have no chance.
Right, but
He says to
it's
himself.
not part of the deterioration. It's
Right.
it's
It's
after.
the end. It's the end. He says.
I mean, at
values
the
have
very
no
end,
chance.
this person realizes that he was right. And
When was he right?
How
in
much
his spring, in his spring, and now he says, no, wait for a
Before he
second.
failed to express.
And his conclusion is that the world is just there's no chance for anything good.
Right,
But he makes the
Values
world
have
that
no
way.
chance. He now believes. Wait. He now believes that his values back then
Back then.
had no chance. He believes the world is such a bad place that values have no chance. This is what I call decadence.
He's blaming the world.
He was there. He was there. He had morals. He didn't do anything, and now he's down there because of
I
this
think if you
cascade.
deteriorate down the scale, then at the bottom, you don't even realize this.
Oh, wait, he realizes it.
No, but he does.
Read that.
So-
He
No,
does.
you don't
Read that
understand the
passage.
passage. Imagine that you have someone who's going into crime, right? And he's becoming worse and worse, and he's hanging out with worse and worse people.
We're done.
And eventually he's in a gang, and he says, and he sees everyone around him is a criminal. He says, oh, humanity is corrupt. Everyone
we need to have a ruling here, a moral ruling judgment that's saying that the lecture is ended according to the meetup. The meetup is end according to Yovav statement, and we can continue the
My statement
discussion.
was optimistic.
Yeah.
So I leave you with this optimistic note that bad regimes, decadent regimes, they're not stable, and the good should prevail. And I hope that you will follow her ask and pronounce your good judgment whenever you can afford it.
And I would say that they are doomed to consume themselves.
I agree.
And
Inshallah,
this,
kavod.
Great meet.
במהרה בימינו. And there is also a saying in Hebrew, שתיקה כהסכמה, which is a nice paraphrase to the
Yes, but
statement.
it's not for פרקי אבות.
יש גם את הפתגמים.
גם היא עשתה את הדיאגרמה הזאת שלה.
והמשכיל בעת ההיא, טוב, נכון?
היא לא כתבה
או
דיאגרם.
סייג לחוכמה.
אני חושב
זה בהקשר להגזרות כנראה.
מה יהיה בדיוק עושה? מעניין אותי.
אני עשיתי